I said, well, I'll go with John for a while. So my whole business with the State Department, I was John. But
Okay.
from up until that time, I was, well, except in the Army, up until that time, I was Glen all of my life.
Okay. This is an oral history of John G. Beville, spelled B-E-V-I-L-L-E. My name is Michael Parker. I'm a volunteer with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program at the University of Florida. Today's date is November 17th, 2025, and I'm here at the home of Mr. Beville in Leesburg, Florida. Mr. Beville, would you please state your full name and when and where you were born?
My full name is John Glen Beville. I was born in Waldo, Florida in 1924.
So you're 101 years old. How do you feel?
I feel great, still kicking.
What was the earliest memory you have as a child?
I remember climbing the tree across the road in front of our house. It was a camphorberry tree, and I had limbs up there that get on. It looked like you would hold the flight when I was playing like I was flying an airplane.
Were you supposed to be up in that tree? Did your parents allow you to go up in that tree?
Do what?
Did the parents let you go in the tree? How old were you?
About 4. And well, they might not have known it. My dad was working on the railroad, so he wasn't able to be home most of the time. And mother taught kindergarten, so she was kind of busy, and I'd slip away.
So you lived through the Depression as a child. Would you share any memories you have as a Depression? Kind of let the audience know what it was like to live through the Depression?
I remember that there was people that were hungry and there was no jobs, and my dad was one of the lucky ones that worked on the railroad, and he was able to do it, and we would have 2 or 3 families that'd come by and begging food because there was no jobs and nothing, and it was a terrible time at that time. I didn't really realize why they was coming by, and just they'd always come to the back door and beg, and my mother'd try her best to give them a couple of canned goods or something from there, because we all felt that we had more than anybody else, and we had to share with them.
So you were born in Waldo. Did you stay in Waldo all your life, or did you move?
I stayed in Waldo till I was 16 years old. Waldo had, the school was only 10 grades, and if you wanted to go get a 12th grade high diploma, you had to catch a bus to go to Gainesville, which was 14 miles away. My 2 older brothers attended Gainesville High School for their last 2 years. Both of them played on a basketball team. But when they went to work and left, my dad and my mother decided that he was working out of Wildwood, Florida, and he'd have to catch a train home to see us once in a while. And so we decided to move to Wildwood in 1940, I believe it was. And I finished high school in Wildwood last 2 years. I graduated in 1942.
Your mom and father, let's talk about your mom and father. Describe your mom growing up. What kind of person was she?
I'd have to say I had the best mom you could have. And she was sweet. She was like at the Sunday school. She had a Sunday school teacher, and everybody loved my mother. I got to feel like she's closest to a saint you can have, and she was one that in her latter life they'd say, Bessie, we're going so and so. You want to go? She'd say, let me get my hat. And she was always ready to go. She was pleasant. Everybody loved her.
How about your dad?
My father, he was a quiet man, and of course, being on the railroad, he wasn't able to be home a lot. But I remember he would get off a run from WWII, and he'd catch a train to Waldo, and get there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and spend the evening with his family, and then catch 11 o'clock train to go back to WWII to go back to work. And then in later times, he's got a little seniority. He worked out of Baldwin, and he'd be gone for 3 days, and he'd come home, be home for a day. But he was a quiet man, and well, I guess I was a little sport brat, but I was the youngest, but he was wonderful. I remember coming home, and he'd want to be talking to us, and he'd just drift off to sleep because he'd been on a run and hadn't had any sleep. So I had the best two parents that anybody could have.
Very nice. You said you graduated from WWII High School, which is only about maybe 5 miles from here. Did you play any sports?
I played basketball, and in Waldo we had basketball and softball, and I played both of those. When I came to WWII, they didn't have softball, they had football. I weighed a whole big 120 pounds, so I didn't go. I hadn't played football when I was that would have been 11th grade. So I didn't go out football, but I went out basketball, made it both years.
As you grew up, was any of your family members in the military?
Yes, I had 2 older brothers. My oldest brother worked as a telegraph operator on a seaboard railroad, and when he was enlisted, he in the Navy.
What was his name?
His name was Arthur Ray Beville, and he went to Biloxi, Mississippi, and taught telegraphy to the sailors so they could send Morse codes over. And he stayed there the whole war.
Okay. And how about the other brother? What was his name?
My other brother was named Byron Albert Beville, but nobody called him that. His name was Buddy from the time he was little, and he was in the service in the Army, and as I said, both of them was telegraph operators on the Seaboard Railroad, and so my brother Buddy went in the railroad unit, and he went to the Philippines, and after they captured, and then it was over, they moved him to Korea, but he wasn't in any actual combat. But
tell me, what were you doing on December 7th, 1941? Where were you, and what were you doing?
I was in the had gone to see a movie. I think it was Abbott and Costello, and they was showing, and all of a sudden they turned it off, and the the gentleman that was running, I forget his name, he said, "We've just heard that Japan attacked us in Pearl Harbor." And so everybody piled out and ran home to sit in front of the radio. We didn't have television, so everybody was crowded around the radio to get Walter Conquat's description of what's going on and how bad it was.
That was Walter Cronkite?
Yeah.
Tell us how and when you joined the military, and which branch?
And my buddy and I, both of us worked on the railroad there. We decided to go to join the Air Corps, and this was in April before I went into the service. And we caught the train from Wildwood to Tampa and got out and walked up to wherever the enlisting place was and took a test. My buddy passed, but they turned me down because I was 2 pounds underweight and I missed the depth perception test. And I should have done that, but I hadn't slept hardly at all the night before because we caught the train down there at 2 o'clock in the morning and so they said, "Come back in 2 weeks," and says, "Drink a quart of water and eat 4 bananas before you come here, and then you'll weigh enough."
What was your buddy's name?
Cecil Cochran. And he was accepted, and he became a P-38 pilot, which I wanted to do. And he was in the Pacific with the Navy.
And tell us what happened next.
And Cecil, I got home, and I was going to go back. 5 days later, I got my draft notice, and I had registered for the draft in my home county of Alachua, but I was living in Wildwood. And I said, well, when I get to Camp Blandon, where I had to go to, I tell them I'm going in the Air Corps. I remember being in Wildwood, and I had to go, like I say, I had to go to Alachua to Gainesville to catch the bus to Camp Blandon. And that, I think that's the first time I ever saw my dad. We were saying goodbye to me, and I grabbed his hand, and he shook my hand and turned around and walked away. And my mother drove me up to Gainesville, and I went to Camp Blandon, and I was there 5 days. And I told him I was going to the Air Corps, and I said, "Yeah, you're now a medical clerk." And they sent me to Camp Barclay, Texas, in Abilene. And
why did they put you in the medical corps? Why was that? Why did they put you in the medical corps? Did you say typing?
Yeah, I could. They found that I could type, and they said, "Well, we need somebody that can type up a record," so they made me a medical clerk.
Okay, so you went to Camp Barclay in Texas. Then what happened?
Well, I was there for 16 weeks of training, and then since I had made 122 on the Army General Classification Test, I was eligible for OCS or ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program. Well, that was going to make you engineer, so, and send you to college. So I said, I think I'll do that. So I signed up for ASTP. They sent us from Camp Barkley, Texas, the first we landed, and we sent us by train, but to Indiana University. We stayed there about a week and a half, and they finally decided that for some reason they couldn't handle us, so they sent us to Rutgers University. Mm-hmm. We stayed there for about 2 weeks, and they finally said that we can't handle them, and they sent us to St. Bonaventure University in Olean, New York.
And that's spelled O-L-E-A-N.
Right. And the thing about it, my mother and my older brother would caught the train up that way, and they thought somehow they got St. Boniface University, and they got to Washington and tried to find St. Boniface, and they couldn't find it, so they turned around and come home. And so I didn't get to see them. But I was there October, and for about 3 weeks, we was taking courses, and I had nothing but almost plain algebra in high school, so I knew that I wasn't going to pass the calculus tests and things that I wouldn't have to. So my buddy and I hitched a ride to Buffalo, New York, which was about 50 miles up there. And of course, anybody in the service at that time would put a thumb up, they'd catch a ride first thing. So anyway, we went out and we both joined the Air Corps. And
this was October of 43 or 44? Do you remember?
43.
43, okay.
And they sent me to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I did odd jobs for a month till they found a place to send me in, and then they sent me to Greensboro, North Carolina, where I took basic training for the Air Corps, and they said, we have too many people that wants to be pilots, so we're going to make you a bombardier. And so after the basic training, they sent us to a
place called Seymour Field?
in Seymour, Indiana, and we was there for about 3 weeks, and I know it was after Mother's Day, and they come in. All we had to do with there was put the firing range scores down in the service record for the people that was there, and it was just after Mother's Day, and they come in and said, welcome to the infantry. And they bused us about, I think it was about 50 miles up to Camp Atterbury at Fort Wayne, and right outside Franklin, Indiana.
And Camp Atterbury, I got that as Atterbury.
Correct.
Okay. And then what happened?
I was assigned to Company K of the 424th Regiment of the 106th Division as a rifleman. And we took training from about, actually got organized about the 1st of June, which as a unit, and I remember my company commander was named Captain Comer. I don't know what his first name was. And we had a big 6'2" husky squad leader named Gilliam that he was very good, and he had been in the service for a while, so he was very good for training. And we trained there for until we left on got on a train and went to Camp Miles Standish, and man.
Did you get orders to go overseas? Is that why you moved?
Yes, well, when we we got orders that first thing they did, and we was there for a short while, and what had happened, the Army had realized that they was going to have D-Day and they was going to need a lot of replacements. So they took at least a third, a half of the trained officers and non-coms and even infantrymen, and sent them to England for replacement. And us gentlemen that was in the Air Corps and wherever, ASTP, had to go in there as replacements of those. So we only had, I would say, from part of June until September. And the latter part of September, the latter part of October, we moved to Camp Miles Standish in New York, where we waited till we could then get on the boat, and they shipped different parts of the 106 in different shipments, and went under different regiments. And I think the 424th went over on the Aquitania, which was a sister ship to the Lithuania, the one that the Germans had sunk.
The Lusitania? The ship, the Lusitania that was sunk?
Yeah, and Aquitania was the one we went over, but they said the sister ship, the Lithuania, was the one that Germans sunk with a lot of people on it.
Okay, and so you were in the 106th Division, the 424th Regiment in K Company, correct?
Yes.
Okay. While you were in all of this basic training, did you stay in touch with your parents?
I wrote them a few times, but I have, during the whole time that I was in the service, I never got to come back home, and I never met anybody that I knew before, except when I was stationed at Camp Atterbury. My brother was in the railroad section of the Army, and he was in Ohio, and we both caught the train to Cincinnati, and we were there for 3 hours together, and then we both went back to our unit. So he's the only person I saw that I knew while I was in the service.
All right, so after Camp Miles Standish, tell us how you got over to England.
We were trucked down to New York, and we loaded on the Aquitania, and they took off, and people were saying, well, where's the convoy? You usually have a convoy. And we were told that that ship was faster than submarines, and they could outrun submarines, and they didn't need to go in a convoy. So we got over there, I think, in 7 days. and we landed in Glasgow, Scotland, and they loaded us on the train, and we went south to England, and we were stationed at Chipping Norton, Chippingnorton, which was about 20 miles from Oxford. And we stayed there. It was Company K and Company L was in Chipping Norton. And we stayed there until we went over. I remember we took training in that area because they had hedgerows, which they had to fight hedgerows over in France, and so they needed to have that big walls of bamboo and things, so you had a hard time getting through them. I remember Thanksgiving, Company K got to eat Thanksgiving dinner first, so we ate at 12 o'clock, and Company L had to wait till we get through, and they ate at 2 o'clock, and about half of the Company L got ptomaine poison for some reason, so I were lucky that way. And they shipped us down to the coast and trucked us down there, and we went over, landed on St. Louis, France.
So you were trucked down to Plymouth,
Plymouth, yeah.
and then you were boated over to Le Havre?
Le Havre, yes.
France. And do you remember when that was?
That was December the 5th.
Okay, 1944?
Yes.
Okay. So when you landed, you're in Le Havre, you're in France, you're right in the thick of things. What happened then?
Well, they loaded us up on, well, first thing they did, we all been carrying gas masks all the way through, and so they told us, just throw your gas mask over here, they're not going to need it. So we, that was a load off of us, and they put us on trucks, and they rode most of the time as fast as they could at nighttime, and in daytime they'd stop and we'd pile out. And it was wet and rainy and cold, and instead of putting up your tent, we put our tent down on the ground so we wouldn't be on the wet dirt while trying to sleep. And we finally got it, the small town of Heckerscheid, which was inside of Germany, about 6 miles. And
I believe Heckerscheid is spelled Heckuschheid, and that's in Germany, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you arrive there?
We arrived there on December the 11th. And we had to, they didn't have any fast food or any hot food, I meant, coming up. So we ate K rations for a couple of days, and then they finally got the mess hall and everything up, and we last couple of days before the battle began, we were able to get hot meals.
For the viewers, tell us what a K ration is.
K ration was usually a can of Spam, a small can of Spam, some biscuits, cracker biscuits, like Triscuits or something like that, and sometimes you'd have a small bar of cheese in there, and
Did they give you cigarettes?
And a pack of cigarettes. I think there were either 2 or 4 cigarettes in there. And those was good trading items because I didn't smoke, and you could trade a cigarette for a can of Spam or something for somebody else. So, but we didn't have hot meals the entire time that we were up there.
So I recall that the 106 headquarters was in Saint Vith, V-I-T-H, in Belgium. You are stationed over in Hackerscheid, Germany, which is in Germany. Tell us what was happening there when you got there. What happened? Were you replacing somebody?
The 2nd Division was in the front there. They had fought all across France and Belgium until they kind of run out of ammunition and everything. Of course, they had used it to chase the Germans, and so they kind of decided to sit and try to recoup and wait until spring and do because they didn't have anything to fight for with, I meant, their ammunition and that, so they decided, since this 2nd Division had been fighting, they needed to go to R&R, rest and relaxation. And so we replaced them man for man. The problem was they took all of their ammunition and heavy guns and machine guns. They were supposed to leave them up there to us because we didn't have any, but they took all their stuff. So we were ill-equipped for anything. But they said, don't worry, just old men and teenagers over there on the other side, they're not going to do anything. So
were you in a foxhole at this time? Where were you?
No, we were stationed in the little town of Heckerscheid in buildings, and they had foxholes outside, but nothing was going on, so they allowed us to stay inside the buildings because it was below freezing out there, the coldest winter in 100 years, they said. And so unless you had to be on patrol, you hunkered down inside and tried to stay warm.
Okay, so what happened on December 16th, 1944?
Well, first thing, on December the 15th, I was in Company K, 424th, and they come over, the sergeant came over to Company Company K he was Company L. He said, we sent out some men on patrol. We need a couple men to fill in where those men were because we were on the point out here. So my buddy volunteered for both of us. So we went over into Company L. We were put with this squad, and we were in this 3-story house. The bottom story was where they kept the cows and things, and the 2nd story was where they lived. But we was on the 2nd story. Of course, when the fight had been going, so the windows was all broke out and everything. It was just a hull of a house, and whenever we wasn't out there on the point, well, we were able to come in there and halfway warm up. It didn't have any heat, but you'd be inside out in the cold. And you'd go out for 2 hours and then you'd be replaced. And that was the night of the 15th. And we was over there the day of the 15th, and the night of the 16th, my buddy and I had been out, and we come back and was in the building, and at 5 o'clock on December the 6th, we all said it sounded like the end of the earth was coming. They immediately at 5 a.m. they started firing their artillery, and they fired these screaming Mimi things that made terrible noise in there, and they playing loud music and flashing lights on the clouds. There was really low clouds, and man, we piled out of the house and went out there, and where we went to for our place, there was a slit trench that was dug, and then the dirt thrown on the other side to kind of hide behind. And when we jumped in the trench, it was full of water, but it had frozen over. We broke through the ice, but it was over our boots, so and that was about 7 in the morning, I think, and we was out. No, we went out there at 5 when all that started, and there was some gunfire, but we didn't get anything right at that time. So
But you had to sit there or stand there in the cold water, lay down in the cold water.
Yeah, so, I took my feet out and kind of laid across the trench. So, then there wasn't any action, so the Sarge sent 2 others out there to replace us, so we could get inside, and we took our shoes off and wrung the water out and tried to drive it out, but got frostbitten feet. But then about 10 o'clock, there was more gunfire, and about 8 o'clock, there was more gunfire, and we run back out there, and we saw a few over there. It was kind of over a hill, and I was able to fire a couple rounds. Oh, by the way, we were only assigned 1 clip of ammunition, which was 8 rounds of fire.
So are you telling me that you're in the very front of the line? There's nobody in front of you, friendlies. No. There's no friendlies in front of you.
Nobody in front of us.
And you only had 8 rounds.
We only had 8 rounds.
And how many guys were out there with you?
Well, it was a squad of 9. Okay. Sergeant and 8 privates and PFCs. And none of us had but that 1 clip. We had no hand grenades. And so we fired a couple of that 8 o'clock. And so we stayed out there till about 9 o'clock, and nothing was going on, and Sarge let us go back in and take the shoes off. Then at a little before 11, there was more gunfire, so we went out to bunker and was in there, and there was, I would estimate between 30 and 40 was Germans were coming up towards us, and so there was gunfire between them and us, and of course, I don't know, we both used all of our ammunition and were firing at them, and then we had nothing, and we had to hunker down in our little bunker, and they threw a grenade, landed right in the edge of our bunker, and my buddy, which happened to be 6'2" and weighed about 190 pounds. I was 5'7" and weighed 143, and there was, you could see a grenade there, and he said, "I'm gonna throw it back," and he started, and I grabbed him by my back with one hand, and I pulled him out of the way. Now, I couldn't, that's impossible, but it happened. And it went off, and neither one of us was hurt. But there was a complete open field back of us, so if we'd have gotten up and run trying to get back to the line, we'd have been, I'm sure we'd have been shot. So we tried to keep from being seen, but finally one little German soldier come over there, and he happened to see us. And of course, I forget exactly what he said, but anyway, next thing you know, there's a group of them around us, and so.
I was curious, did he say anything in English, or was it all German?
No, he said, "Raus mit uns," or something like that, come out. So we had to come out. And I remember they took us kind of about 20 yards or so back there, and there was a American soldier, one of Company K's men, that had a big wound on his back where a grenade went off, and we took our sulfur powders that we had and we both used that to keep it from getting infected.
Do you remember your buddy's name that was in the foxhole with you?
His name was Lee Taylor from Andersonville, South Carolina. And of course, you didn't never use the first name hardly. It's Beville and Taylor. So.
Okay. So you were giving medical attention to a K Company soldier. Then what happened?
No, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, you were telling us you were giving medical attention to a K Company soldier, and what happened then?
Well, we there were some German that had gotten shot and injured and everything, and they made a temporary stretcher, and we had to carry that German soldier on the stretcher back, and they, I don't really know what happened to the gentleman that was injured, the American, because they made us go the other way, so.
Okay, then what happened?
They marched us back a couple of miles, I think it was, and to the Siegfried line, and we went down into that, and they set us down in there at cold, bare concrete, and we stayed there rest of the day and the night. Had no water, no food, no nothing. And then the next day they got us out and marched us to Pugh, Germany, which I thought at that time it must have been 16 miles, but somebody says it's just 6. But we met up. There's a few of us. This was in kind of from the 424th, and there were several hundreds of the 423rd Regiment and the 422nd Regiment that the colonel of their regiment surrendered because they had nothing to fight with. And so they were charged at Pugh, and we were marched to Pugh, and we, on the way there, if you didn't have any water, no nothing, and so I saw some of them trying to get out of the line and go pick some snow to get something, and get hit with rifle butts and everything. And so you didn't dare get out of line. And they marched us to Pugh. We sat on the side of the mountain, the hill, until that night a train come in with boxcars, and they loaded us in these boxcars. They were called 40 and 8. They were supposed to be a limit of 40 men or 8 horses, but they put 60 or more in each boxcar, and so you couldn't sit down or lay down. You were just almost standing back to back to everybody and they loaded us in the middle of the day, and we stayed there because the trains didn't move during the daytime, because if the fighter pilots come on and saw them, they'd strafe them. So they waited till night, and we went from Pugh, Germany to Limburg, Germany. And we got to Limburg late in the afternoon, and that's right. I don't back up a little bit. That was a long time in there with people, and have 60 in that boxcar, and of course you have to relieve yourself. And we tried to get over in one corner, and it got pretty, people trying to move away from it or not being next to it, so it was right terrible there. And then we got to Limburg. They left us in the boxcars because at nighttime, but while we were there, the British came over. The British always bombed at night. The Americans always bombed in the daytime. And the British bombed the railroad, and they hit some of the cars that had PWs in it. I think I heard was a few that got injured, but I don't know if they killed any of them. And we were at Limburg there. They put us in a old stockyard where they used to sell, they bring cows and have sales at the stockyard there. And I remember we were there over Christmas, and someone would start singing a Christmas carol, and the rest of us would chime in, and of course cry a little bit about thinking about home and all that. It was, and then even the Germans would start singing with us. They would sing in German, but they sung Silent Night in their language. And, they fed us once a day.
What did they feed you?
I don't remember too much about that, but I think it was mostly some kind of soup that they would fix. And I don't remember too much about that one, but I know what we ate after later on. And then they put us on a train. This was about the 5th of January, and sent us to the prison camp at Luckenwalde, Germany.
I believe that's spelled Lukenvalde.
And that was about 40 miles south of Berlin. It was a very big prisoner of war camp with several nationalities of prisoners, English, French, and Australians, and it also had some German, some Russian prisoners, and so it was a big one.
Did it have a camp designation, a number or a name to it?
And I think it was 3A.
Stalag?
Stalag 3A.
Okay.
And we stayed there for about, I'd say 2 weeks. And then they shipped a dozen of us out to a work camp at Wunsdorf, WUEND, at ORF, but they pronounced it Wundorf. And there were 300 of us Americans there, and that went out to work every day.
Was that a work camp?
That was a work camp.
And what did you do? What kind of work?
They did anything that they wanted to do. We dug tank traps because you knew the tank troops would be coming, so we dug tank traps. We had to take coal and put it, and they made coke, and we were supposed to put it in a boxcars and of a kind of V, then we had to throw it in, and it was higher than our head, and we had to get the shovel and throw over there. And if you didn't make it and it fell off, they would hit you with a rifle. And one time, after a couple of, been there quite a while, and I was kind of weak, and I missed, and it fell down in the railroad, and the guy hit me with a rifle with it. So I had to go to the doctor and get it, doctor to then they said they were served doctors, and I couldn't talk. I couldn't understand them, so all of a sudden they put a rod up my nose and straightened it out. I heard it go correct. But anyway, you did that. Finally, they was on a cruise that they would take some buildings that had been bombed, and they had the blocks and the bricks. They'd take it over to this place, and there was, I think, 6 of us that was assigned to take and set out in the cold, and we'd chip off the concrete off the brick, and we wasn't supposed to break any of those bricks, and they'd whack you one if you broke a brick or something. But anyway, we sat out there and did all day long, and that's what we did. We had a German guard that he wasn't. I guess he wasn't quite all right. He could think all right, but he was kind of, we called him Big Stoop, and he just smiled, and he's big tall fella, but he was, wasn't quite right in the head, but we worked outside and did that, and there was a bakery right next to us, and they would allow us to go into the bakery to use the bathroom, but only one at a time could go. And we would go in there, and they would bake the bread. This German black bread, they called it. They'd bake the bread, and they'd wrap it in 2 or 3 wrappers and put it up, and it's supposed to age for about 6 months, but so they had these breads sitting around, and they're going to the bathroom. If you came by one of those and there's nobody around, we'd stick it under our jacket and walk out with it. Well, the thing was, we had to break it in half, give half to Big Stoop to keep him from telling on us. And then we'd spread the rest of it down. But
did anybody try to escape while we were on these details?
Several of the guys that had been there a while tried it, and they didn't get very far. And we were about, I'd say at least 50 miles or so inside of Germany, and not speaking German or anything. Several tried it, but they always got caught.
Did you ever get updates on how the war was going? Did you get any news that the Americans were moving this way or that way?
I remember they come and brought us a German paper, and on the headlines, "The pig is dead."
The pig is
German.
dead.
And it was the day that Roosevelt died. And they made a big deal out of it, but we didn't get any news hardly at all from nobody got any mail or anything. So once in a while, somebody'd come by, and they would have had just been captured or something, and they might have a copy of the Stars and Stripes with them, but we really had no news of it.
Okay, so after the work detail, where did you go? Did you stay there or did you get moved?
Well, there's a couple of tales I'm going to tell you about for him. On March the 15th, we were working there near the bakery, and this German sergeant came and told our guard, Big Stoop, says, "Oh, these two men," and so we went with him. They carried us to the Gestapo headquarters there in Wunsdorf, and they said, finally, in German and English, are trying to, that we had to load all of their furniture on the back of the truck because they said they were moving their headquarters to Berlin. So we loaded the truck on the back, and and they put us on the back, and of course it was still wintertime, and we went to Berlin, and on the way, people would see us with American uniforms on, and if they had a chance, they'd throw rocks at us and things, but we got to Berlin and unloaded the furniture and started to come back, and air raid sirens went off, so we had to go into air raid shelter, and he marched two of us in there, and we got more or less in a kind of corner, and some of the Germans finally recognized we had American uniforms on, and they come over there and they said, well, the Americans bombed in the daytime, so they knew it was the Americans that was bombing on that time. And the guard says, no, says, I will be shot if I don't bring these prisoners back, so you don't, he pointed his gun at them, so we got out of that and got back, and then I got through the good food that they had, the rutabaga soup or turnips or greens off of them. I got yellow jaundice, and I got 2 weeks to even go to work. So there was 2 or 3 of us at the time. They sent us back to Luckenwald, and they replaced us with some well guys down there, so they'd have a whole 300.
So you went back to Stalag 3A?
Yes.
And that was in Luckenwald. Okay. Then what happened?
Well, I don't know if I told you that about one time. Oh yeah, I did. We were there, I would say, about 2 or 3 weeks. I don't really remember that, but all of a sudden, one day the Germans there, and then woke up the next morning and there wasn't any German guards or anything. So some of the prisoners were in good enough shape. They got out of the camp and went out trying to find food or something else. But all of a sudden the Russians came in, and they got, if they caught them, they'd put them back in prison. The Russians put guards around the whole camp and put machine guns there, and nobody could come or go. And we were there, I think about five days or more, and they never fed us or anything.
Why do you think the Russians did that? Why did the Russians want our
Well, tell you the truth, the Russians were trying to eat off the land themselves, whatever they could get. Some of the soldiers would be able to talk to them, some of them, and said they had to get their own food. And so they didn't feed us at all. And then finally, on May 22nd, I believe it is, the Americans were at Magdeburg, which was on the Elbe River. The Russian told them they had come across the Elbe River almost to the camp, and the Russians told them they couldn't come over there, they had to go back. So they backtracked to the Elbe River, but they knew that it had quite a few captive Americans in the camp there. So on the 22nd, they sent a whole bunch of GI 6x6 trucks and ambulances to the camp there to pick up their PWs. And Russian says, no, you can't have anybody except the ones that's in sick bay, and you got to bring us a Russian that had been captured. And so, so they only allowed, I think it was about 22 of us that was in sick bay, and we got in the ambulances, and Wade was able to go back to Magdeburg and be free again.
So you were liberated around May 22nd. Let's go back, and I'm going to ask you a question about, can you tell us how you feel about how the Army was prepared for that day on December 16th, 1944? How do you feel how you were prepared?
That is a sore point to me, and most of us, we didn't realize at first that we were so ill prepared. We relieved the 2nd Division, and they were supposed to leave their artillery and their machine guns and heavy and all of their ammunition with us because they was going back to R&R. And like I said, we only had one clip and didn't have bayonet, and a lot of us didn't have overcoats. We just had our field jackets. And looking back, there were several reports to the people, to the commanders there, that they were building up on the other side, the Germans were, and because there was farmers that could go back and forth across the line, and they were informed. They also caught several Germans that was masquerading as American soldiers who would come over and change the signs on the road, and of course, but they kept informing them that there was a build up, and Eisenhower was informed several times that they had a big build-up and something happened, and all the generals said, "Oh no, they can't do that because of that." So Eisenhower went to a banquet on the night before the Bulge started, and and some of our commanders went to banquets, but the general that controlled what went on, they didn't pay any attention to all of the information. And I feel that it was 90% Eisenhower and the general's fault that so many men got killed and injured in this. It's been a sore point, and I read in the World War II organization that they got, and they talk about the Battle of the Bulge and how great Patton was to come up and relieve Bastogne, and that was the whole thing of the Battle of the Bulge. But that was just a feint, and they was trying to pull troops away from the real battle up St. Viet, and they just did not pay any attention to information. They thought they knew everything. And then to send us up so unprepared, no, not enough. And our, another thing, the Germans had just left, the second division had just chased the Germans out, so they knew where all the foxholes were and all the things were, and they first started firing. Well, they fired over the heads of the people on line so they could cut the lines going back to the artillery, so they wasn't prepared to be able to get any artillery fired over them because they didn't know where to fire. And it was just one great big foul up, and they didn't use any sense when they realized it. All they knew, they'd say, "Oh well, they beat," and so they quit, and we just gonna wait. And
that wasn't the way it was, right? Tell us what happened when Germany surrendered. Well, not really Germany surrendered, when you got back as a POW. Tell us what happened to you, and tell us the trips that you had to take to get back home.
Well, when we was at Luckenwald, and we were able to get the ambulance to get back to Magdeburg. When first thing they said was they unloaded us off of this, the ambulances we were in, and they told you to take off your clothes, everything, shoes and all, socks, throw them in this 50-gallon barrel here, and as soon as we did, we'd been wearing the same clothes since we got captured, so we had when we was in the camps, they would give us straw to put on to sleep on, and it's the same straw they had bed bugs in it, and we had all kind of stuff. So we put them all over there, and they poured gas on them and burned it up. And then they said, well, we got hot showers, or you got tubs to go in and have a hot tub. Well, we all, just most of us, decided we'd get in a hot tub and just soak in that hot water. And of course, shortly after that, we got up and they issued us all new clothes, and then they carried us into the mess hall and says, what do you want to eat? And they would fix stuff, and all of us had been not eating a month, and we would try to eat, and it was so good, but we'd stuff it down, and some of us and got sick because we ate so quick. But it was so good, and I remember they had white bread, and that was the whitest white bread I'd ever seen in my life. And we just they treated us great, and they put us in a number system, you told them. Well, I had a jaw tooth that had an abscess, and I also had grown went into another kind of tooth, and I had to have it pulled. So they decided to send me to Paris to the hospital because they didn't have anybody there. So they had numbering systems that you catch a plane. And so one day I was, about the fifth day I was there, I had to go to the bathroom, and I went to the bathroom, and while I was there, they called my number. And I didn't answer it, so they went to the next one. And so when I come back, somebody said, well, you missed your flight. And so I went up, and they put me on schedule for the next one. But that was a C-47, and went to the end of the runway, and it started down the runway, went about 50 yards, and the right wheel somehow crumbled under it, and then it skidded over to the side. I said, well, I'm glad I'm not on that one. I don't think anybody got hurt. They got shook up. But then they flew me to Paris, and they pulled my tooth, and I was there about 5 days. They did allow me out, and me and two others walked about 3 or 4 blocks and got tired and turned around and went back. And then they flew me to the United States in a C-47, and we left France and passed over to the coast of France, and was out about an hour, and then one of the Callens on this tube engine plane was going bang, bang, bang over there, and I said, whoa, whoa. And we hollered to the pilot, and they had to cut that one off, so we flew on only one plane to the rest of the way to the Azores. And we all said, now, wouldn't that be a hell of a note to go through all the war and then go down and going home? But they changed planes in Azores. We landed in Newfoundland, and then went on and landed in Boston. And we stayed there about 3 or 4 days, and then they got another plane, and I think they had 6 ex-POWs on there, and we started off, well, they landed one in West Virginia, and then they landed another one in Virginia, and another one in North Carolina, and a couple in Tennessee, and finally we landed at in Georgia, Macon, Georgia, at the base there.
Is that Warner Robins?
You went Warner Robins, yes, and there we were met with 2 ambulances, and there was 2 of us that were going to Thomasville to the hospital there, and we got there and they checked us all in, and they said, okay, now the kitchen is open 24 hours a day to you. Is anything you want, you tell us and we'll get it. Well, of course we wanted something sweet, but you couldn't eat much because I know a couple of times you'd eat such good stuff and you'd keep on eating, and you'd kind of get something sick at your stomach because you're not used to eating. So we learned to be moderate for a while. I stayed there about 5 days, and of course, my parents didn't have a phone. Of course, most people didn't back in those days. So I sent a wire and told them that I was told that I was going to be moved to Daytona Beach to the convalescent hospital there, and don't try to drive up to Thomasville, because back in those days, gas was rationing, and they probably didn't have enough gas to come in anyway. But then I went, flew to Daytona, and I was there for a day, and I sent another wire to my parents that I was there and they could come over. So when they got the wire, my dad was on a trip on one of his trains and to Miami, so my mother came over to see me, and she spent the day with me. But they held me there for about a little over a week, and they tried to, I remember we were there and a hurricane was coming close, so they took soldiers that was in the hospital and carried us down to this brick building that they felt would be safe with. And of course the hurricane never really got over there. But while we were, all of us soldiers was in the school building, the kids was out of school and they was outside just playing, having a big time. That makes a difference. Anyway, we all had a big laugh about that. And I stayed there, and then Mother came over to visit me, and I couldn't get out then at that time, and I was over there about a week, and they did a lot of things to try to get us back to normal, and then they gave me a 90-day furlough, and my mother came over and picked me up. There's another time my dad was out on a run, so she came over, and I remember going back home. She says, "Glenn, what you want for your first meal?" I said, "I want some black-eyed peas and pork chops." and banana pudding. She says, "You got it."
Well, when you left the military, what rank did you hold?
I was a corporal.
Corporal. And I see that you had several medals. I understand that you have a Bronze Star, a POW medal, an American Campaign Medal, a World War II Victory Medal, and many others.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Did the war change you as a person?
Yes and no. It trained me to realize that what we were fighting and what could have happened if we hadn't fought. As I spoke to a high school class in Port St. Joe one time, and I said, you know, if the Germans had won, you would now be speaking German. And one of the teenagers jumped up and says, "Yeah, I'm glad to hear you. I'm glad we didn't have to speak German." And
tell us what you did after the war.
after the war, I come home and I got out in October, and
That's 1945.
1945.
Okay.
And I went to City Hall in Wildwood, and I signed up for the 2020 Club,
Which was?
which was you got $20 a week for 20 weeks sent you, and they wanted to know what kind of job I wanted, and I told the lady, well, I wanted to be a snow shoveler. In Florida.
In Florida.
Yeah. But that was a joke. But I was on that 2020 club. Of course, being, I didn't have to earn anything except that I was an ex-POW. And I started getting back into civilian life, and I didn't go back to work for the railroad. I thought about it, but then I found out that I could go to GI Bill, go to college. So
Let me stop you there. You said the 2020 Club. For the future, people are going to hear that, and you said $20.
the 2020 club where you could $20 for 20 weeks if you was a GI getting out of the service.
$20. Was that a lot of money back then?
No, that was average wage back then.
So it was significant.
It was very helpful if you didn't have you just got out of service, you didn't have a job, and most of us didn't have any real job before we got in the service because we was old and young. So we.
So then what did you do after the war, working?
After that, I went and signed up to go to the University of Florida, and I started there in January of 1946, I believe it was.
And don't they have a saying in Florida? Is there a chant, "Go Gators"?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I was a go-gator because I'd been a gator all my life because I lived at Waldo, which was only 14 miles away. We used to, when I was a kid, we would hitchhike over to Gainesville on football girl days, and there was a section with the concrete stands here, and they had a wire fence, and it was just room enough for us to slip through there and go get a seat. So I saw a lot of games for free. But
So what else? So what did you do for work afterwards? After the University of Florida, what did you do?
I got married right after I started school, and I had my son Michael while we were there. But I first started into engineering school, and I quickly found out that you had to have geometry and trigonometry, and I had taken one class of geometry in high school. I didn't learn anything because I was smart enough. I'd go up. This was a elderly retired teacher that come to replace someone that had been drafted, and she would give you a problem for the next day. And I would go up and talk to her after the class was over, and she would halfway work my problem. And so I really didn't learn much. So I knew that being in ASTP, that to be an engineer, I didn't have it. That's why we checked out and went to the Air Corps. But I signed up to be engineer, and then I went to after a class on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock was I was not the algebra, but anyway and I said it's time for me to go change my objective, so I went and changed to be an accountant. So I graduated with a job in accounting and economics in 1949.
And you said you had a son, Michael. Can you tell me about Michael?
I had my son Michael was born in August 30th, and we at that time we was living in the big city of Waldo, but my parents lived in the reason lived in Wildwood, and we were down here when my first wife, June, Michael's mother, had labor pains, so we carried her to the hospital, and Michael was born in Leesburg here.
And did he go into the military? Michael?
Michael, yes, he went to the military. That was a little different the way it started. Michael got out of high school, and he went to college. I went junior college down in Palatka, and we had two cars, so he had one car, and him and his buddy, I found out later that him and his buddy would cook up meals that his mother and I had furnished the money, and then they would cook up meals and they would sell it to the other students around there and make money, and they'd go. And then he had the car, and one time he come home and I said, "That's a nice sweater, where'd you get that?" He said, "Oh, I bought it." I said, "How'd you buy it?" "Oh, well, we picked up cans and got it." I found out he had a car, he would drive the car and his buddy'd go along and pick up cans, and then they'd swap. So he was burning mine gas to pick up cans, so he... so after the first semester, I says, yeah, the grades wasn't too good either, and I said, you're coming home, we're going to school here. He says, and kind of hummed, and after the next thing I know, he had joined the Air Corps.
How long was he in the military?
Huh?
How long was he in the military? How long was Michael in the military?
I think he was in there 3 years.
In the Air Force, but then he went...
Air Force.
Yeah.
And then he came out. I'm not sure, but then he went to college, and he got his degree, and he was offered a commission in the Army, and he took that, and he went to serve until he retired, and then he went in the reserves. He had a total of about 30 some odd years in service. And
recently, you went on a honor flightless trip. Can you tell us about that? What honor flight is and how it meant what it meant to you?
The honor flight is a well-respected thing that the community does for servicemen. And it started out in World War I, but now they've extended it to other places. But it's a wonderful opportunity. They make it a happy, great day if you go on a flight to Washington. It starts at about 5 in the morning, and everybody's excited, and you get on the plane, and everybody trying to meet everybody else. And you leave about 6 in the morning, you fly to Washington, you get off, and sometimes they land in Washington, sometimes I have to land in Baltimore, but they put you on buses. I think they usually have about 2 or 3 buses at the time, and each veteran has a aide that goes with him and helps him and sees that everything, and he goes on time, and they're so sweet and nice that you just love them. And then they take you all over Washington. They take you to the Vietnam Wall, and they take you to the Iwo Jima statue, and they take you to the unknown soldier. That's such an impressive ceremony and the way they march and twist, and I've heard that they go everything just by the numbers, and they have to do it, and it's a very moving ceremony. And then they take you to the World War II Memorial, which has a memorial for each state, and it's very moving, and you want to find your state and go there and take your pictures by it and things like that. And then they get on the plane and get back home, and when you get back home, when got the fire trucks out there spraying water over the plane, and people, bunches of people are out there hollering and clapping, and it's an exciting moment. And this virtual flight that I had, the one when you got back to the American Legion and you sat out there, then they introduced you. That was fabulous, and the guy not next to me, but the two one down was 2 years older than I was, and everybody remarked about our age. But it's a very moving occasion, and it's something I want to tell the organizers and everybody who works in there that they're doing a wonderful, wonderful job. And I'll try my best to sell America to everybody. It's the best place in the world that's ever been made, and we ought to stand up and fight for the right.
Well, I know we've covered most of your 101 years, 1 year life. Is there any type of advice that you'd like to give to the future generations of America? The young kids?
I'd like to say you need to know what the country's about and how the founding fathers wrote the statutes and our Constitution. And there's no other place in the world that's like this, and there's no other place that you can make yourself, or you can be lazy and not. But you need to know that if you work hard and I shouldn't believe in the better, believe in Christ, and that you can do things in this that you can't do in you never can do in other countries.
Do you have any other things that you'd like to say before we sign off?
Well, I'm kind of in the opinion that the nation needs to better teach the Constitution and what this country's about. I think we're getting a lot of people that don't teach what the United States is about, and try to teach them socialism and against Christianity. And of course, I'm a Christian, and I believe in that, and we should all thank him that we are in such a wonderful country. I would probably like to see some type of compulsory military training for people, maybe 6 months or so, or 2 years in the service, if they could. And that teaches you about what this country's about. What they're teaching now in college, I don't think is I know it's not right. In a lot of these colleges are teaching communism and socialism and don't believe in democracy. So I I think they ought to be weeded out and sent somewhere else.
All right, well, this ends the oral history of John Glen Beville. Mr. Beville, this was an honor speaking with you today. It's not often someone gets to talk to a real, true American hero. You and your generation saved this country.
Well,
And America thanks you for your service.
well, I just have to say, don't consider myself a hero. I'm one of the millions that served in the service, and my son has too. And yeah, I do it again for my country. And
You're my hero. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am.
Well done. Well done.